Hey everybody, welcome back to On the Run with Beards and Dunn. And Beards, you're looking good, and we have another person online with us. We have a guest today, and I'm actually kind of nervous. You know, there's people that you know in your life that you look up to and respect. I hate to use the word father figures, your coach, and Jay Dirksen is on with us today. And Jay, I've known since 1972. And we'll maybe get into some stories about that here in a little bit. But I'm going to do a little introduction because there might be some listeners. If you're not from South Dakota, you may not actually, recognize the name Jay Dirksen right off the top of your head. If you're a runner from the state of South Dakota, I don't think there's a doubt you'll know who we're talking about. But Jay Dirksen, and I'm going to kind of do a little intro here. Jay went to high school in Madison. And I'm going to ask Jay, one of my first questions is, Jay, you were a state champion, I believe, in high school, and I think you were a multi-sport athlete. I don't know that for sure. I'm going to ask you that. You got into distance running. You came to SDSU as a coach in 1969 after running for South Dakota State, and I think you got your bachelor's and your master's degree while you were there. You were an All-American while you were at SDSU, and you went right into this coaching position in 1969. And you also won the first longest day, which is now called the Brookings Marathon. I believe it was that year. You won the Drake Relays Marathon in 1969. Now, for our listeners, I got to tell you, I started running in 1972, and I thought that was the old days, archaic. We barely could find running shoes. I can't imagine being a distance runner in the 1960s. But anyway, you won Drake in 1969. You won the inaugural Paavo Nurmi Marathon. Dick, you're familiar with that.
Holy cow!
Jay won that in 1969 and 2:32. He won Drake at 2:35. He won Twin Cities Marathon in 1971 in 2:28.
Oh my gosh.
And he has a PR of 2:21:53. You're going to have to remind us where you did that at. And that's still number 10, I believe, on the all-time South Dakota natives list. I'm happy to tell you, Jay, I'm number 6 on that list now. So I'm a little ahead. One time I'm ahead of you on something. But, I was reading through these today. I did a little research on you. I'm thinking, I knew Jay for 5 years. 3 years I was in high school, 2 years I was in college. He never once, I don't remember, brought this kind of stuff up and talked about it, or you didn't have to. You carried enough gravitas without having to build yourself up. I mean, we all really, admired and looked up to and respected you. And, you were at SDSU from 69 to 77. I was there in 75 and 76. So I had you for 2 years. And those were two of my, just greatest years. You went to Illinois and to Missouri, I believe, from between 77 and 83. Then Lincoln, Nebraska from 1983 to 2011. I think I did my research. That's like a 28-year period. You had 3 NCAA champions that you coached in those years, 14 All-Americans, 5 conference titles, 6 regional titles, Midwest Region Cross Country Coach of the Year. I mean, that's just, I'm sure, I didn't even get into, I know, it goes on and on and on here. And, it's just an honor for me, and I'm really excited about today because we've kind of lost contact over the years, and we've lost some close friends. I'm just going to share quickly. This is what happens, Jay, when we go to introduce our guests, like Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter, Ron Tabb. They have so much. By the time we let them talk, the program's half over because you hate to shortchange anybody because this is some outstanding, your coaching resume is without question. But I met you in 1972, and I don't know if that was the first year. I think it was that you put on a running camp for high school kids. And there were 13 boys and 1 girl, Jane Whiff. I don't know if you remember this or not. And I showed up running about 1 to 2 miles a day and jumped into 15 to 20 miles a day during that week at camp. I got blisters so bad. Jay was so kind. I remember you took me to the training room, and I really appreciated the attention you gave me. You cut my blisters off, which they needed to be dealt with. You padded them with like moleskin. You taped them because I was running in like canvas tennis shoes at that time. And you really tried to keep me on my feet, because, we were running, and it was brutal. And I loved every minute of it. I remember we did a video analysis. You have to remember, people, in 1972, videotape was like cutting edge technology. And SDSU had a videotape machine, which you somehow got a hold of. And you videotaped us all. And we had Jay Monfort. And Jay was just the nicest guy, great athlete, multiple state champion. And Jay was at the camp, and when you filmed him, I mean, he was a poetry in motion. He was almost not as good as Dick, but close. But he did things well. when they did me, I just remember your comment, Jay, and it was the truth. You said, Mike tries real hard. And I thought, because my form was terrible. I was landing on my heels. My feet were flopping the pavement. My arms were coming across my midline, and you were kind-hearted because you didn't hold back, and you were you weren't mean, but you told things the way it was. And you taught us that if you want to get better, you're going to have to work at it and do it well. Work smart. I learned the hard, easy principle that year. I learned, my training program, my whole career was based on what we did at SDSU, the pattern of long runs Sundays, Monday, Wednesday, Friday recovery days, Tuesday, Thursday were hard workouts. And we ran hard, and we ran easy, because we knew hard was coming. And I loved it. We thrived on it, and I just appreciated your approach. You were like our general, and we were your soldiers. And we were willing to, if you would have told us to jump off a 10-foot wall because it would build our leg strength, we would have all jumped off that 10-foot wall because we wanted to be better. And you were there to make us better. And so that is a long-winded introduction to who Jay Dirksen is for me. And I know, Dick, you have only heard probably most of the stories we talk about. I know Jay comes up in our podcast quite often.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I think of some of the goofy things that you and I maybe have gotten into over the years, and I don't think Jay would have approved. Anyway.
Well, let's let Jay tell some of this story here. Yeah, Jay, welcome aboard.
Madison High School. Did you really quarterback the football team, play basketball, run track, and cross country?
Well, actually, I'm so old that you guys don't remember this, but Madison had only, when you were coming up, they only had one high school. But when I was in school, we had two. And the way it worked was this. Everybody lived inside the city limits, went to Madison High School. Everybody outside the city limits went to General Beadle High School, which was on the campus of General Beadle State Teachers College. So we were the lab school. And that was quite an experience. I could give you days and stuff on that, but we would get all the student teachers that student taught at General Beadle came to our school and did their student teaching there. They didn't go anywhere else. They only came to our school. So we have a teacher, and then in every class we would maybe have a student teacher in that class. So you can imagine, I don't know how many times, probably 3 or 4 times a year we would change student teachers as well as our regular teachers. So, man, we put them through the ringer, I'll tell you. I could tell you a quick story. I was in chemistry class, and they had the chemistry class was pretty big, and then there was they had a class for what they called kind of the burnouts in our day, and there was like 8 of them in there, and so one of these student teachers got assigned to that burnout class. He went in for his first day of teaching, and about 20 minutes later, the door opened. He walked out, and he never taught again. But anyway, so I went to General Beadle High School. It was Class B school at that time. We had A and B. We didn't have C and D and double A and all that stuff then. We had A and B. Actually, the state cross country meet was all one class. It was just everybody, and I love that. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
In individual sports, this nonsense they have, and everybody's state champions crazy. But
right.
Anyway, so I went to General Beadle High School. I did play quarterback and middle linebacker as a freshman. but Beards will get a kick out of this because I've heard some of his stories about football. So after my first year in his track season, and I was doing okay in track, and so they told me one day on the bus on the way to practice, because we'd bus down to Flint Field where the high school was. We had our sports in the middle of the day. We didn't have them afterwards. We had in the middle of the day. And so we were busing down to the track for track practice, and they informed me, the football coach and the basketball coach informed me that I would be on the cross country team next year. And I was only one. So they got rid of me real quick. But I did punt my senior year. I was a punter on the football team. Because that's another whole story too. And I played basketball. I tried to play all that stuff, but I wasn't any good at it. It's like they told me, they said, someday you could be pretty good at running if you concentrate on it. But I was never going to be good at all the other sports.
So Jay, at what age did you think, I'm pretty good at this running thing?
Well, you're pretty good depending on what pond you're swimming in.
True.
So, I went out I remember our first day of track practice when I was a freshman. We ran around it was a little gym. We ran around and they just wanted us to keep running. I kept running and I was running after everybody else got done. So we went to the first meet, which was the Madison Invitational. It was like at the end of April, I think, or no, that was the end of March, I think it was. And we went to the first meet. They had me run the mile. So that was my first. That's when I kind of thought, well, I think I could be pretty good at that.
Do you remember how fast you ran that first mile?
Yeah. Not really. I didn't keep a diary then.
What do you guess?
It was under, I would guess it's 5:30 to 6 minutes, somewhere in there. I remember the day it poured and the track was just covered with water from curb to curb. And it was just mud. And I got done and I was black with everything. You couldn't read the uniform or nothing. So I wasn't in first place, obviously.
All right. So what did you get a state championship in high school?
In Class B in the mile. I think I ran.
Do you remember
not for sure, but I think it was 4:35. Okay. And Dean Bjerke the same year was a junior. I was a senior. He ran 4:29, I believe. And in those days, that was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
In the 60s, right after that, just right after that came the Reinhardts and Heidenreich and Tietze and
Schemmel.
Who were the Reinhardt? Schemmel. Yeah. Schemmel. Yeah, Schemmel. He was, I remember that guy running. He was a good athlete. He was really a good basketball player. And I'd see him run. He'd come right by my house in the morning. He'd run around town. It was like a 5 mile. He'd run around, then he'd play basketball and stuff. And so he was in pretty good shape. About that one of the best races I ever saw was with him and Rick Burdenground at the Hardwood Relays. They ran, I don't know what they ran. I think they might have broke 4:20 there. But, I just mentioned Rick Burdenground, went to Flanders Indian School.
Right.
And I took him to a marathon, actually, one of the marathons in 69. He ran 2:50 in his first in high school.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah. And I'm not sure about, you mentioned Jay Monfort. I think Jay Monfort had a really good time when he was in high school.
Well, I was going to mention Jay. I remember there was a group of Jim Trigo, Jay Monfort. I can't remember some of the other runners ran across the state of South Dakota just for, and somebody wrote a paper and it was in the library at the SDSU. Do you remember what that was? They were averaging about 40 miles a day, if I remember correctly.
No, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, no. It was, and Jay was in high school. And, it's just kind of, the things we were doing, Jay, I ran my first marathon kind of through your guidance when I was 18 years old. You don't hear about too many 18-year-olds probably even being allowed to run a marathon nowadays.
Well,
they're not prohibited,
actually,
but it's,
I was looking at some of my training diaries and I was noticing that I took Steve Heidenreich with me down to a race in Kansas, I think it was. And I think he ran I want to say 3:08 or something like that. But I mean, these, one thing about South Dakota, they've had a disproportionate number of really good distance runners. And no, they really have. And it goes back to it really has, it goes back to the Rich Reno days. And there were some tremendous coaches. And, Arthur Lydiard came along about this time. That's what influenced me probably the most was Arthur Lydiard. I got a chance a couple of times to run with him and to, go to his clinics and stuff. And, the one thing I didn't quite understand, I probably knew it, but I was too, into this is what you got to do to, and one size fits all. Well, one size doesn't fit all. It doesn't fit all at all, but it did when you were with me.
Well, we've talked, it fit me real well. And I think it fit Dick real well. Mike and Mark Bills, I think they maybe didn't transition to the program. I loved the big miles. I liked 20-mile runs. They dreaded them. I remember both Mike one week and Mark the next week. We were running with Lyle. They each threw up the first time they did a 20. I think Mark did the first time and Mike did the second time. They got over that. They never did that again. But I think that was really a shock to their system. And
I
the Grant
remember.
boys,
I remember.
they didn't
I
look
remember
forward to
taking
those
Scott
20s.
Underwood on his first one. I remember taking Scott Underwood on his first 20 miler.
How'd that go?
We went 20 miles. Well, it went pretty good, except I had to stop at my house on the way in and give him some soup to revive him so he could make it in.
Caloric deficit, yeah.
When Gary Dentley came, I took him. That was the thing. I went out and ran with the guys all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I should ever ask somebody to do something that I couldn't do. Not that I was so good at it, but I figured, hey, if you could do it, then anybody could do it. So yeah. So
well,
we were.
Well, in 1969, you were the head coach, but you were also running these. Well, let's be honest. For that date and time, a 2:21 marathon, you were a national class runner.
Right.
Tell me, you had aspiration. Now, I heard. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Professionalism was still. Coaching was a professional. Did you have your salary maybe set aside, or was there some way that you could stay an amateur?
Well, let me
explain
that. Okay, yeah. In those days, EAAU ran things, and you were considered professional if you did anything in the sport. So if you coached in the sport, if you were an athlete trainer, no matter what, you're a professional. Well, I thought, I'll get around that. So I just had I just got paid for being an instructor at South Dakota State. So I coached for free.
Ah.
Yeah. So you're okay as long as you didn't get paid for it. So that was when that was kind of a weird deal. I can give you a little story about that. Aubrey Dooley was the coach. Well, if you go way back, Jim Emmerich, who is a good friend of mine, actually he's a good friend of my dad's. We're talking way back now, the 40s, 50s. He coached him. He was Olympic. Yeah, he was Olympic trainer in
68.
Melbourne.
I know 60. Yeah, and 60.
I think Melbourne and in Tokyo. I think those two places. Okay. 60, 68. Yeah, right. Okay. So anyway, he was a big influence, and so since he knew my dad, I just thought, man, it'd be great to go to SDSU and be a distance runner because that's where Jim Emmerich was, and they won the national championship, and I think 1958 NAIA. Gary Pearson was the individual champion, and Gary ran a lot of marathons. Matter of fact, he ran some of the ones I ran in. And anyway, so man, I'm going down all these rabbit holes here.
Okay.
So Jim Emmerich was the coach, and then Glenn Robinson became the coach. He was my coach the first, and then Tom Woodall, who is a legend, and he's too. And so he was my coach, and for the first 2 years actually, and then he left, went to Eastern Illinois, and they had some great teams. They won the national championship in cross country, and so Aubrey Dooley then and Aubrey Dooley was one of the best pole vaulters in the world at the time. He's one of the first guys that used the fiberglass pole. He was a South Dakota State coach, and he. Bless his heart, he didn't know a thing about distance running. And so we had a few. If you ever get a chance to talk to Dean Bjorky and some of those guys, you can ask about some of those days. But anyway, but he left and went to Southern Illinois University. And when he did, a job opened up, and all of us that were on the team, we wanted, that had been on the team, we wanted Rich Greeno to be. And they also tried to get a guy named Gary Osborne from Drake, who was assistant coach. And so they tried to get him. Well, the bottom line was they couldn't pay him enough. So one day I'm out for a run. I'd gone for, I don't know what it was. It's 94 degrees. And this is when I was a grad assistant. I'm sitting in the locker room without a stitch of clothes on, and in walks Stan Marshall. And you'd have to know Stan Marshall. Yeah. He was all business, and he was the head of the NCAA at the time. He was the president of the NCAA at the time. And he said to me, Jay, we've been trying to hire a track coach, and we just, to be honest with you, we just can't pay him enough. And we've talked to Coach Dooley, and he and I think that you could, we'd give you the job. I think it was $7,000. And I said, well, I could do it, but I want to keep running. And so I told him about that. We can work that out. So they got that worked out. And then, so that's how I got the job. I was 24 years old. What I was going to do was finish my master's and go to California and run. In 1969, 251.30 or 222.53, That was the third best time that year in the U.S. I think
Wow.
Kenny Moore and somebody else they were way ahead of me. And then of course Buddy Edelin, being from Sioux Falls, Washington High School, and being at the University of Minnesota, and then I think he had the world record for a very short time.
Yeah.
Ran in the Polytechnic Marathon or something in England. And he was my hero as far as a marathoner to be like. And got to run against him a couple of times in the Jack 15 and that stuff. And so anyway, so that's how I got the job. And so a big part of my life has been my faith in Jesus Christ. And to be real honest with you, all these things happen, all these jobs and everything. I didn't even apply for them. It's just, I was, God just put me there.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. I can't, so that's who gets the praise and the glory and the honor, not me.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jay. When I came to your camp between my freshman and sophomore, I knew nothing. Gene Borman was my coach. I love him dearly. He was a great guy, good man. And he 40 years of coaching. He's been volunteer coaching in his retirement now. And I can't say enough about Gene, but and he gave us the best he had. But I just had this, and you mentioned it. I think it's the Holy Spirit. When I saw an ad in the Argus Leader for a running camp at South Dakota State, it was $90. That still blows me away for a week, room and board, coaching, $90. And I went to my mom and dad, and we weren't rich, we weren't poor, and I never asked much, and I just said, "Can I do this?" And they said, "Sure." They they didn't hesitate, and I went up there, and I was like a pig in slop. I tell you, being around a group of runners, and what I tell the story is Gene Whiff kicked my butt. Jane Whiff. Jane, people don't give her enough credit. She went on to be a 2:36 marathoner, national class marathon runner. And she was the sweetest girl, cute. We all had a crush on her, but nobody would dare say anything to her because she was too cute. And she stayed in that dorm all by herself. And Rich Greeno, bless his heart, was the only one allowed to go over there to get her up, make sure everything was okay. She was safe. And anyway, Jane, at the last day, you had a 3-mile race. And Jane, she beat me fair and square. And as a 14, 15-year-old boy, that really put the dent in your ego a little bit. But there was no ribbing. There was all pats on the back. We didn't do knuckle bumps back in those days. It was all pats on the back and handshakes. Good job. Good effort. You ran as best as you could. That's all we ask. Do your best. Yep. And I walked out of there with my head up. And I was now, and you, Russ Strandy, Dean Bjerke, Lyle Clausen, Rich Greeno, you guys mentored and showed us in 1 week what it meant to be a runner, what it meant to live the runner's lifestyle. And it took root for me. And, I went back to that camp every year. And, I don't think it was much of a question when I wanted to go to college. Kind of like you, wouldn't it be great to go to SDSU and run where Gary Bentley ran, to be coached by Jay Dirksen, Scott Underwood, Jim Trigo, Don Salzvig. I could go on and on. These guys were all what I thought were men of steel, and I wanted to be part of that heritage. And so to have that opportunity and have you there, and, you got to set on the right course. And I got to admit, it was a bit of a blow, and I'm not trying to lay a guilt trip on you, but when I got a call, I think I was captain that year, my junior year, and you called, and Stan Marshall, he said, "Mike, is there any chance you could come up to SDSU?" It was in the summer. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I came up there, and you guys shared with me that you were going to be leaving. And it was, you could have knocked me over with a feather, but at the same time, Jay, I was proud of you because it was a step up. I mean, you were a Division II moving to go to Division I. And I don't think none of us ever, what do I want to say, felt anything but good for you. Maybe a little bad for us, but we had no regrets for ourselves or of that situation. And they actually mentioned for a while, and we really were trying to see if they, who was the coach over in Burnsville, Minnesota?
Dave Griffith. That's the guy I wanted to.
Dave Griffith.
Yep, that was the rumor. And Rich Greeno, but Rich had that thing going at Sioux Falls Lincoln. I don't know what it would have taken for him to leave that.
They couldn't pay those guys enough. No. Dave at Burnsville was making more money than most college head coaches were. He was making a lot of money, doing some great job, did some great work up there. I mean, he did. Yeah. He had some tremendous teams.
We could have, but you had given us the blueprint for 2 years. We had followed it, and I remember you basically Stan and you and Barry McCune was there, and Barry said, "Mike, what if you guys coach yourselves? I'll get you to the meets. I'll make sure the PM the travel, that's administrative mumbo jumbo. But as far as doing the workouts, do you guys think you guys could do it? And I said, yeah, I think we could. It wasn't ideal, but you had really kind of mold, we were in the mold. You had established the mold and we had been in it. And, Scott came on at the last minute. We were excited. Everybody who doesn't love Scott Underwood. And so that was really made it much more realistic, I guess. And so we had your workouts, and basically I think Scott followed those for a period of time. And then
I remember when I was there, Don, when I came in 1978, and Jay, I owe you a lot of credit just because that was the first time I, started doing weekly 20-mile runs and 100+ mile weeks. And Dunn and I got into a little competition with
summer mileage. Jay, tell us about that. You would put out a newsletter. Yeah. What was the impetus behind all that?
I saw that when I was kind of looking over a few things. You ran 1,170 miles that summer, your first summer.
13 and he was 14 miles a day. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, that all came from Arthur Lydiard, though.
Right.
Yeah. That was what, and it was interesting when you talked to him. They did a lot more running than that. Was just the stuff they counted. They didn't count stuff like jogging and all this kind of stuff. Like we used to have. Remember that workout we used to do? We'd run out to some hill. We called it Killer Hill. It's 5.5 miles out there. Then we'd run this half-mile hill six times. And jog back. And then we come back.
17-mile workout.
17-mile workout. Yeah.
And 5 in the
afternoon. 5 in the morning.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
But you see, one of the things that I was doing then that it was totally wrong, we were racing every week on top of it.
Yeah.
And when I got a little smarter, we raced every other week. And then the training cycle becomes, instead of 7 days, it becomes 14 days. And you can spread it out, and it works so much better for recovery, and you don't have to be in a hurry to do those. I mean, if you only have 7 days and you only do one hard workout in a race and a 20 miler, I mean, that's pretty good amount. You try and throw another one in there. And so, we could actually, what we'd do a lot of times is we'd rest 2 days before the meet and then run a little bit more the day before and whatever. But then once I got away from, especially when I got to Nebraska, then I divided everybody into groups by where they were at. And I made it a big deal, or tried to, is you couldn't go up to the next group until you could do the stuff we wanted you to do. So you weren't allowed to go on a 20-mile run unless you were running 100 miles a week. It had to be 20% of the weekly total. So with the girls, they might be running, say, 60 miles. Well, their long run was 12. But then when I got a little later, we got some of the ones that were a little bit better and, that were really good. And they were putting in, they were running 20 on the weekends too.
So Jay, when you went from South Dakota State to Division II, all of a sudden you made that jump to the big league, so to say, to Division I. Was there a big difference in talent, and I suppose a big difference in dollars and scholarships, things like that? And
even within it, I can tell you one quick one. When I was at Missouri, I was there 1 year. My recruiting budget was $900. We went to Nebraska, it was $30,000.
Oh my God.
So wow. I mean, so that was just between Division II schools or one school.
Yeah.
Division I, the Division I, I remember trying to get, I heard you had Rodney Haven on. I heard him tell a story about my trying to recruit him. And, I actually did do what he said. I called Steve Heidner, or Jeff Schemmel. I called him on the phone and said, "Hey Jeff, I'm up here with Rodney Haven. I'm trying to get him convinced to come to Nebraska, and I don't think he understands the difference between Division I and II." And so he told him whatever he told him, but Scott had done a great job of with Rod, and I came in kind of late and everything, because until he got later in his senior year, he wasn't running the kind of times that weren't the kind of, talent that he really was. But that's the thing about South Dakota kids. They don't always get noticed. Nowadays they do. Everybody's got a video and films and all that stuff. But in those days, you could go, if you were smart, a coach, you go to some little meet and find a Mike Dunlap under a rock somewhere.
Right.
And,
tell us about Kai Wold.
Oh, Kyle Wold. Caldwell, Devlin, South Dakota. Population, I don't know what, a couple hundred.
300, I think.
300, and I don't really, right off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what he did in high school, but he didn't do much of anything. So he comes out, and at that time I let anybody come out that wanted to run. And so he came out, and right from day one, he was just up there trying to run with Bentley. And we went up to the University of Minnesota or Wisconsin. They had a really good team. I think they were Big Ten champions. We went up there. We went
Mark Johnson. Yeah.
Yes, Mark Johnson. They went 1-2. Our two guys went 1-2 on him. And as a matter of fact, Dan McClyman, who I don't know, Dick, if you remember him, but he had a daughter that was pretty good, Molly McClyman, that was a real good runner. But anyway, he died a number of years ago. I can't remember what it was, but he's the Wisconsin coach, one of the very best coaches in the country. And he sees us. We're out. They're going to breakfast at like 6 in. We've got our guys out for a 5-mile run before the race. We always ran 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours before the race. We would do a 5-mile run. And the reason we did it was because it takes the body about 4 hours to get from resting to ready to compete. And so thought we'd speed that process up a little bit, get them some food, relax a little bit and run. Well, anyway, they're going out for their run. So he wants to know what in the world we're doing out there running. And then a little later, I found out they were doing the same thing. But Bentley and Wold were, Kyle Wold, man, what a talent. And he literally came from under a rock. Nobody, even in the state, knew who he was, I don't think. Well, Doug Garrett's was another one. You ran with him.
Oh, Doug's a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah, Doug
I stay in touch with Doug. Yeah.
He was he an All-American in the steeplechase, I think, as a senior?
He ran on the national championship team you guys had in 74.
Yeah, but I think, anyway, I started him in the steeplechase, and here's this guy that had run, I don't know what his times were. I doubt if he broke 10 minutes for 2 miles or, probably didn't break 4:45 for the mile. No. So, but this is what happens if you can take anybody that really has the right attitude, like you did. The other thing about those camps that we had, we weren't babysitting anybody. If you came to that camp, you were good, because they knew you're going to run 4 times a day. It was ridiculous, but it was also that separates the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean?
I remember.
Anyhow,
I remember you.
Hey, Dick, do you remember? I wanted to ask you. You remember when you ran at the University of Illinois? When you were at Waseca, your national meet was there.
Oh, I don't remember that.
You remember it was in Champaign. I think it was about what year would that be? Were you about 81?
Oh,
no, I was
79.
77.
No, 76, 77.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay.
And I remember, because I knew your coach, John Folkrod, real well.
Coach Folkrod, you betcha.
Friend. Yeah, you're a very good friend and a good guy. Really good guy.
You betcha. I still stay in close touch with him.
So tell him hi next time you see him.
I sure will.
Yeah, and so he's telling me, and I'd known about you because didn't you run a marathon in junior college? And
yes.
So I wasn't the distance coach, but Gary Winnick is really good. And I talked to you, but you don't remember, I'm sure, because I was talking to you. I said, have you thought about it? Would you be interested in Illinois or something? And South Dakota State came up, and I remember telling you, hey, that'd be a great place to go. That's where I coached. But that's a long time. But you don't remember any of that stuff anymore.
Well, Jay, I do remember meeting you at a meet somewhere. Must have been that one. And we talked and stuff, but that was the only time I'd ever really I'd heard about you, obviously.
Well, I've seen you a couple of times. I saw you at the Jack 15,
1981.
You spoke.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was up there talking to you. I wanted to come talk to you, and I thought, I'm not going to bother him. He didn't need me bothering him. So, but I know all about you because that race you had with Salazar is just, that's one of the all-time greats.
I can't remember what I had for lunch a few hours ago, but Jay, I can remember that race like it happened this morning.
Well, that's 45 years ago almost, and people
42,
people still talk about that race.
Well, it was. I tell you, Jay, though, there's not a whole lot of people, whether it be an individual or team, that has finished second and has got more bang for their buck than I have for not winning a race.
Yeah, but it was the race for the ages. It was a race for the ages.
Yeah, duel in the sun.
Well, it was fun, that's for sure.
Oh man!
Well, Jay, before
I tell you what.
Well,
I was just going to say, this is so much fun, man. You'd go on for
days. Oh, we do. And that story of Wisconsin, I just love it because they had Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson was outstanding in high school and collegiate. Yeah. He ran really well, and I just remember, I think it was Lyle or somebody said when they saw Bentley coming around the last corner heading to the finish, nobody was shocked by that. They were kind of expecting him and Mark Johnson to have a good duel, but they kind of thought Bentley's got some seasoning on him. He's a pretty talented runner. But they said when they saw Kyle Wolf coming in and Mark Johnson was third or whatever, he said mouths dropped. And I remember we went to that meet as freshmen. And, I bragged about this. I think Wisconsin wanted they wanted SDSU at their invitational. And if I remember correctly, they put us up, we stayed at a dormitory.
Yeah.
And I think they gave us some travel money for the university. So maybe it didn't really cost the university for us to go that far. It was a heck of a drive. And, we ran there year after year after year. I think they appreciated us it was a great meet to go to. And our senior year, when Dick was with us, we only got beat by 2 teams that year. One was by Wisconsin at their invitational, which is no shame, getting beat by Wisconsin. And then Cal Poly SLO beat us at the national meet.
They had a really great team.
They had 4 they had 4 in the top 10, I think, or something. We couldn't have beat them if we would have had 5 All-Americans. But, Jay, I want to give you credit. When we came as freshmen, words are powerful. I didn't realize at the time, but you told us, I'm building you guys to win a national championship kind of by our senior year. And, and I just read a quote by Arthur Lyniard where it says it takes about 3 years on a structured, well-founded program for an athlete really to kind of raise to their level of performance. We all have genetic potential. I talk about Dick a lot because, it takes a lot of faith and commitment to make the commitment to say, I want to see what my genetic potential is. I just appreciate kids. And you said, Jay, you let anybody come out on a team, and you did. And nobody was turned away. Everybody was accepted. Everybody was welcome. And some of those kids worked their tails off. But unfortunately, I can't explain why they were, there's low responders, there's high responders. There's some people that respond to training, and their genetics, I really believe that's a big part of it, lets them, their performance come to a level, that makes the varsity, let's say, or what have you like that. But how do you know if you never give those genes a chance to show themselves?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I think.
Well, anybody can get better, and the big thing is there's 3 general training principles that if you keep in mind, doesn't make any difference what the sport is, shot put, whatever, the first one is the law of overload. And that is, if you have a system of the body, no matter what it is, if you're throwing the shot put or you're
running a marathon,
shooting free throws, if you want to get better, you've got to overload the system. You've got to, it can't do what it just kind of does when it's at rest. You've got to put it under stress, and it gets better and more easily can handle it. The next one is the law of specificity, which means that it doesn't do you any good to throw the football 150 yards if you're going to shoot a 15-foot free throw. And so it doesn't do you any good. See, I never was a proponent of weight training for distance runners, and which may surprise some people, but no, probably doesn't surprise. They know me. And I've never really done a lot with stretching either, because, you and
I are in the same wavelength.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that. Yeah, I'm the same way. I never. But one of the things, if you read research and see a lot of stuff, one of the best things to do to warm up is to just do what you're going to do. So in other words, like when I go out to play golf, which I'm terrible at, but I play a lot. I don't do a lot of, all I do is swing the club a few times. I don't go down and touch my toe, all this, nonsense that some people do, bands or stretching and all that. But you specifically got to work the specific, systems the way they're going to work. And so this is where you come into your steady state runs, I was looking at something. I went to an Olympic training camp in '68. We went to, it was for marathoners. And it was it's interesting. They had 6 regional qualifying meets in 1968, and they took the 20 or the 18 best times from 6 races around the country. I think I might have been the last guy that got selected. I ran at Minnesota and I ran 2:26 on 2:26. It was my second marathon ever. And I remember Ron Dawes was one of them. And Ron Dawes had a lot of influence on me too. And Pat Lannon. Did you ever know Pat Lannon?
Oh, I knew Pat well and Ron real well, both of them.
Larry Pontonen. Tom Heinonen was another guy.
Yeah,
Tom Heinonen was, I think he won that race actually. Minnesota's had some just unbelievable, Gary Berkland and you go on. I mean, I'd tell you one of the best coaches I thought that I, of all the coaches that I knew, have known over the years was Roy Griak at Minnesota.
He was a wonderful guy.
This guy, he knew how to, particularly guys that were 10K and above. I mean, he was really good with 10K people. And he had a ton of Steve Placentia. I mean,
right.
I can't remember. There's who was the one guy? Anyway, at the Olympic training camp, there were a couple of guys from that came through him that were there. And anyway, so
overload,
I started on this thing.
Specificity, and number 3. What's the third?
Reversibility.
Okay.
If you quit working out, you're going to lose it.
Boy, but tell me that. Yeah, I've been a couch potato for 6 weeks, and man, I feel like a sack of potatoes or something.
See, this is why you train. This is why you train year round, and you don't take. I mean, you take some rest, but you don't quit. You don't just decide. Well, I'll try it in 3 years. I'll see how it goes. You're just not going to be any good in 3 years like you were. You're going to have to get you might get back quicker than you did the first time, depending on your age. But so the law of specificity, the law of overload, and the law of reversibility. Remember those 3 things. And then the things like you were talking about, hard, easy, see, because and I've heard one of you guys were talking about this, the training effect actually doesn't take place during the workout. It takes place during the rest period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you do this 20-mile run and you tear yourself down. And now the body says, hey, if you're going to do that to me again, I got to make some changes here. And so you make some changes. You learn how to handle things better and so on. Well, I was looking at this training diary and I saw I'd gone on a 30-mile run at Alamosa at 7,200 feet. First time I'd ever gone on a run that long. Matter of fact, the first marathon I ever ran, I ran 2:42, I think it was at. And then the second one was that one I was telling you about, that regional one in Minneapolis. And so, and afterwards, it's kind of interesting I wrote down, I have a diary, and I've noticed you guys, when you're talking, be in your diaries, evidently looking at stuff. Well, some of the things that I wrote down, things I learned, this was after the first one, and I didn't, because I got to 20 miles in an hour and 58 minutes.
Wow.
And I ran an hour 2:42. So 44 minutes for the last 6. That was pretty pathetic. But first, number 1, run. I can't read some of this. Run more of a paced race, because I started too fast. And I've always told people when you run the marathon, just don't be in any hurry. Don't even worry about it until you get halfway through it. Just run easy. Especially the first one. Drink water sooner. I didn't drink. In those days, it was kind of a badge of honor to not ever drink anything. You didn't drink anything. And so I learned I had to do that, and I figured out those ketchup bottles that they had at the restaurants, those red ones, that would squeeze.
Right.
I got a couple of those and cut the tops off a little bit and threw stuff in there.
Perfect.
And then let's see, what was the other one? Use skin lube. Oh, gee whiz. My feet were just blisters, just like Mike was talking about, and under my armpits.
Oh, and your nipples sometimes.
Yeah. And so I found out what skin lube was. And I was looking at the second one I ran, and I said my feet were great. They looked better than when I started, because I just lubed them all up before I ever ran. And we didn't have all the nice shoes like you have in these days.
No.
And then the other thing was a long run. I don't think I'd ever been on a run longer than 10 miles before I ran that first marathon.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, no. I had 2. I ran the Jack 15. I remember Pat Lannon said something, you ought to run a marathon, or Dawes, one of them. And I said, oh, yeah, that shouldn't be any problem. That's only 10 more miles than the 15. I can handle that.
Jay, I'm going to throw in there. I remember, I give you credit for this. And I don't know if you remember us telling us this, but at the camp, you said, never pass a water fountain without taking a drink out of it. And you need fluid before you're thirsty. When you're thirsty, it's too late.
Yeah,
it's too late.
It's 30 minutes behind.
Yeah.
That was Russ Strandy. I can still remember him. Russ Strandy said that. I remember little Russ, he'd say, he'd say, when you go by that drinking fountain, you always take a drink.
Take a drink, whether if you think you need it or not. And thinking
about for a walk.
Drinking water, and I'm going to remind you of this because I told my sister this story this morning. She's going up to visit a friend, and I thought she said Aurora, but it's Astoria. Anyway, and I said, Aurora, that's right by Brickens. I go, Jay had us run a workout early in the season. It was a 15-mile midweek run. And it was supposed to be not a slow run, but whenever you get a bunch of college guys together, and Dick did this run. We did it pretty much every year. And Dick, the year you did it, it was Mark Bills, the Brandt boys, you and me, Ken Zazadlo.
Yeah.
And we headed off to Aurora. And just like you said, Jay, back in those days, we got to Aurora and it was a hot, hot day. And
I remember
the freshman year, I think we always found a hose in Aurora. We always had that in our back of our mind. We'll get to Aurora, we'll find a hose, and you don't even ask the people. You turn on their spigot, everybody lines up, and you maybe take 2 slurps because you didn't want a gut full of water. You'd get a stitch, that's misery. So you just wet your mouth, and then the next guy would say, gimme. Well, then those guys will start running, and you're staying in line waiting to get a drink. Well, anyway, I think we lost Jay. But
no, I'm here.
We'll see if he
I
comes
lost
back
Dick.
on here. But
Dick, I
the first year, and I think I might have told this story, and I don't know if Jay, if he'll hear this later, but he hopefully he'll be back. I got back, and this is going to be a little maybe unnerving for some of our non-running listeners, Dick. But I've ever told you I peed, and it was basically blood, and that's
I've done that many times.
Yes, and it scared me. I was an 18-year-old freshman in high school. Or in college, excuse me. And I had never thought of that ever being a possibility, but I'd ran so hard that day in hot conditions.
Really?
And I called Jay. I mean, I was scared. I thought, I hate to say, I thought I was going to die.
You think you're dying?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought the same. I thought the same thing when it first happened to me.
Well, I quick called Jay. I called. We had his home address and phone number because I'd been back to the dorm. Everybody had gone back to the dorm. He'd gone home, I guess, because he had been out there. And he said, "Oh, take it, relax, Mike. It's okay. Because he probably heard the fear in my voice. I'm not sure. He said, "Here's what I want you to do." He said, "Drink water. Keep drinking water. And when you feel, when you have to go to the bathroom again, check it. And if it's still that way, bloody, call me back." I don't know what he would have done then, taking me to the hospital, but it wasn't.
Doctor,
and he basically said your bladder gets kind of bruised. It's rubbing around in there, and it sounds gross, but it's one of those things you brag about as you get old. And okay, well, you're back. I'm back. Dick's disappeared on us, which is, computers and modern technology. Unfortunately, we're of that age, Jay, and that's my only excuse. My son and these young people, it's like second nature. It's like writing cursive for us. That's computers for them. We can, and writing cursive is a mystery to most young people nowadays because they don't even teach it, I've been told. But so when this kind of stuff happens, what's kind of cool is my son will put this all together and actually look and sound pretty good. Before I get done here, Jay, because we are going to get a little long, and I know Dick has a commitment that he said he had to get to. You have got a cross-country invitational, the Woody Greeno Jay Dirksen invite. But this honor you got of the Greeno Dirksen, tell him a little bit. That race, that's a big meet. It's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Am I not mistaken?
Well, can you hear me okay?
I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
I think your camera's a little off center.
Well, I moved it because of light behind.
You're looking good.
In the dark.
There you go.
Yeah, I've never looked good, but you got to work with. You got to go with what you got to work with.
Anyway. I think Dick might have had to leave, so we won't wait for Dick. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. That's okay. So originally we had a meet one weekend that the university had. It was a Nebraska Invitational, and then they had the Woody Greeno. Nebraska Wesleyan had a meet, and Woody Greeno was the coach. So we put I went to Woody, and I said, Woody, each of us have kind of medium-sized meets or small meets. Why don't we just put it together and we'll call it we called it, I think originally it was a Nebraska Wesleyan Invitational, and they did part of this work and we did part. I always kept track of the course and stuff. They did the entries and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good.
And so then when Woody died, I said we should put Woody Woody's name on it, which we did, Woody Green Invitational. Well, then after I left, Dave Harris, who was the coach, he decided, they didn't even ask me. I would have told them no, but so I don't acknowledge the Dirksen part of that. It's the Woody Green Invitational.
Yeah,
And,
well, congratulate. You know. I think it's a great honor. You just definitely deserve it. Well, you know, like I said, we'll probably, you know, I've said this to many of our guests. There's never enough time, and we do try to keep these within a reasonable time limit because I think, other than, you know, people that are, you know, from our generation who just can't get enough of this stuff, which aren't that many of us anymore, would probably want to sit through more than about 45 minutes. So, you know, I do want to, I don't know, maybe kind of bring this to a head, but, you know, Jay, I've never had an opportunity, you know, and as I get older, I'm trying to not pass the opportunities to meet, you know, with Bob Bartling, with Lyle Kloss, and with yourself to thank you. You know, sometimes you have people in your life and you appreciate them, but you never tell them that, and that, you know, and that you love them, and you never tell them that because you kind of go, it's uncomfortable, and I don't know if they'd really understand what I'm talking about or not. And then you get to an age where you don't care. You know, it's kind of like with hugging with men. You know, guys never hug. They didn't hug in my generation.
No, I didn't mind either.
You know, and I'm getting better at it, Jay. I tell you, practice makes perfect. Just like you said, specificity. Keep doing it, and overload, and you'll get more. You'll become more natural. And so I do want to, you know, convey my thanks to you because I don't know, you know, where my life would be today without attending that SDSU running camp as a sophomore in high school, and you know, not getting embarrassed, not being you know, everyone was accepted and encouraged, and you can't get enough of that in life. And so when you're around people that give you that, you know, you really owe it. And like I said, I was too young maybe at the time to ever say that to you, but to thank you for your kindness, your leadership, and also your honesty. You know, I think that's one of the things that sometimes comes across as being nowadays with political correctness, everybody's afraid that, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, you know what? Sometimes your feelings need to get hurt because that's the only thing that'll motivate you to make a change for your own good. And you don't see it at the time. And you say, well, that guy, and not that I'm trying to say you were ever mean. I never felt you were mean. You're like a general. I think you loved your troops, but you also had expectations that you wanted us to live up to. And I can tell you, we did some goofy, nutty things as 18, 19-year-old kids. And you had to call us out on it a couple times. And it was never taken the wrong way. It was always taken with, you know, he's right. We may not admit it. And I'd share one last story. You know, when I got to college, I thought, and don't ask me why, but you always think that drinking beer makes you like an adult. And in South Dakota, as you remember, Jay, you could drink beer when you're 18. We had that 3-2 beer.
I don't know. I never drank. So
no, you never did. Well, I didn't either in high school. But you get to college, and you hear all these stories about, kegers, and it's so much fun. And, you know, I was thinking, well, I wonder whether, you know, because in high school, they were pretty strict. If you were caught drinking, you're off the team. You know, even if there was somebody said they saw you doing it, you were going to have some consequences. I remember, you know, right at the beginning, I don't think you probably even remember this, but you said, you know, as far as alcohol and that, you guys are old enough to make your own decisions for yourself. He goes, but I just want to tell you one thing. You know, I know how hard you're going to work because you were the coach and you knew how hard we're going to work. And you said, and I know how much you want to be better as runners. And so it just doesn't make any sense to me that you'd want to go out and do something that would be counterproductive to that goal. But it's your decision. Yep. You threw the responsibility on us. And I thought to myself, you know, damn, he took all the fun out of it, which is what I really needed to hear. It wasn't because you said we can't do it. Well, that just kind of makes the forbidden fruit look a little more tempting. No, you guys go ahead. You know, if you think that's what you want to do, but you know, I can't prevent you from doing that. But, you know, I think you kind of said, you know, think this through. Does that make sense? And it didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't make any sense.
I can remember you telling me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to work all week long building the garage and then burning it down on the weekend.
There you go. Well, and, you know, I think your words of, you know, that I always think people try to make things so hard. You know, I love reading running books. I went to Barnes & Noble the other day. You can't find any publications because everything's on the internet. I think the publications have gone out of business in the process. Runner's World is still out there. It's just full of ads, and it really doesn't tell you much anymore. But, you know, and it comes right down to it. Everybody's looking for that secret recipe. I think Frank Shorter said you don't run a 5-minute miles in a marathon on good looks and a secret recipe. It was
Yeah.
basically the basic principles that, Arthur Lydiard figured it out. You kind of said, well, let's, and I think sometimes you experimented on us, and you had to, because, sometimes you had, and I don't know how you did it on your own in 1967, 1968, 1969. Maybe a few of those individuals like Arthur Lydiard came into your life and it gave you those principles to work off of, because to just spontaneously come upon this on your own would be almost a miracle. But it's built on
I spent a lot of time. I'd go to every clinic I could go to, and I had every book that was probably written about track and field. Bill Bowerman was another one that
the Oregon
had a big
system.
influence on me.
Oh.
Lydiard. Percy Cerrutis from Australia, he never had any. He was a big weight guy. Matter of fact, they were telling me about some people that had been to Dipsy, where his training thing was.
Camp. Yeah.
And he said he had all these people would come there and they'd see all these guys lifting weights and stuff, And then I was telling this guy was there who actually went there and spent some time, and he said that Cerrutis would every time a visitor would come, he'd yell, "Hey, visitor's coming, get on those weights." And so they'd get on the weights and do all this stuff, and everybody thought that's what was their key to success, and it had nothing to do with it at all.
I love it. I love it. But, it really comes down to, and it's really motivation. And so to have a coach who holds you, I don't know how to say it, not hold your feet to the fire, but challenges you, and I was wondering about your theory. Dick and I talk about this quite a bit. The older I get, the faster I was, and the harder we walked to school both ways uphill and all that kind of stuff. And you know how it gets. You try to look back, and it's all rose-colored glasses. We make it sound like it was a piece of cake. But I think you kind of showed us we're capable of more than we think we are. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. 10 miles a day. I'm not saying high school kids, and this is where that individuality. Gary Lindgren, I know you were probably a fan. I'm a huge fan, even though
actually I was at an Olympic training camp in '70 at Pullman, Washington, and he was there. So I knew him. He's absolutely crazy. I mean,
you told us some stories about his little squeaky voice. And
he had this little squeaky voice. First day he comes in. He's on a trip overseas, and he comes in. He knocks on the door, and he goes. There's Jerry Jobski, who is a runner from Arizona State, and he says, "Room service."
But he was a beast. The guy was an absolute
So we go
beast.
for a run. We go for a run the first time. He's because it's Pullman and everybody. So we all get in this. We go for this run, and he starts out at about 4:30 a mile pace, and we go down through this campus area, and all of a sudden he comes to a screeching halt, and there's a gal out on the side of the street sidewalk there, and he says, "Hey, how about we buy brooms and sweep together?"
Oh my!
I mean, he was just nuts.
And yet,
nuts.
He thrived. Now, you always take what you hear in stories and anecdotes. They claimed he ran up to 200 miles a week, and I'm not saying he didn't. He may have done that on occasion. I don't know if he did that consistently, which is hard to imagine. But here's somebody, and now his genetics. How would you ever be able to recover from something like that? I'm not sure. Prefontaine was the other one. Bill Bowerman, I think I read somewhere, or Dillinger, one of them said they really had a hard time. You could usually run an athlete, I hate to say run him into the ground if you weren't careful. Pre kind of had that ability. He was so tough, he could take a lot of really heavy duty work and come back and kind of thrive on it, where a lot of guys, they couldn't stand up to it. And you go, well, what separated him from the average? And you go, well, that's a gift of God.
Beards is that way.
Exactly.
He has an incredible tolerance for pain, for just, way beyond the normal human being.
How do you know? How many of those guys are out there? And
there aren't very many.
Well, there aren't. But you'll never know until you put yourself in a position to give yourself an opportunity. And I just read a thing about an artist that they said, it's kind of sad nowadays. We're willing to settle. We're willing to settle, and settle means what? It's good enough. It's good enough.
Yeah.
And you go, well, how do you know what's good enough for you? Is 70, I'm not saying everybody should start running 200 miles a week. How do you find that you have that potential? Dick kind of thrived on 120 to 140. I'll share with you, when I got above 100, it was kind of shaky. And I don't know if it's some biomechanics involved, if there's some, you mentioned Paul Coffin, the podiatrist. He's made a career out of saying, we're not all designed perfectly. There's imbalances, and sometimes you can compensate for those or train for those. And sometimes you have to learn to live with them. And maybe that's a limiting factor. I'm not sure,
Well, this is why one size doesn't fit all, because there's some people that can, I found that out real quick. I could have two people run the same time and do not totally different workouts, but volume wise, they were different. And it might have been for various reasons. And some of it's just willing to tolerate the pain that you're going to, and be able to, Some people can't tolerate the pain, but their systems won't allow them to tolerate as much as they can tolerate.
I think, Scott admits everybody evolves. And I think Rod's found that out too. Joel Brandt, I love Joel and Paul Brandt. I just talked to Paul Brandt the other day, and Dick said Paul called him today. These are farm kids from Clear Lake. I tell you, Clear Lake, yes. I don't know what's in the water over there, but we should.
I recruited those guys.
Oh,
I recruited those guys. I was so, I really had mixed emotions to leave because I recruited those two guys, and, the Bills were there. You were there, Fisher, all the, I knew we had a really good team, and it didn't surprise me at all that you guys won the national championship later on.
Well, we got second our junior and senior years.
Or second, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years in a row. And, we hold our heads up because we got beat by two better teams. There's just no way around it. And so you can't do more than what you can do. But those Brandt boys, and we always give them a hard time because they'd hardly show up on the morning runs. They kind of disappeared when it come to Sunday 20s. A lot of us went home. The Bills and us we were home buddies. We'd always go home to our moms on the weekend, get our laundry done. And so we never knew what they were doing. But, Joel said, by the time he got to be a junior and senior, he had kind of figured out, he was thriving on that, I'm not going to 40, 50, 60 miles a week. He didn't need the morning runs. He ran a 14:05 5K, and had the school record for a long, long time. And not even Rod didn't get it. I think it was Bob Lowry's, Brad Lowry came along.
Oh, Brad,
Brad came along and finally beat Joel's 5K time. And now they've had a few guys go sub 14, of course, and that sort of thing. But Jay, I tell you what, this is just a treat for me, and I hope you tolerated it. You seem to get through it fairly well.
Oh, yeah. Give me a
I'd
call.
like to do it again.
We hopefully.
Always. And we need to get back. I know you've been back to Brookings, and I hate to bring this up. When Rich passed in Sioux Falls, I think you were probably there, and for the whatever event, funeral and what have you, and I was, I think, here in North Carolina at that time, and then with Bob, Dick and I we have, it's bittersweet that we had a chance to have him. We had him we recorded him 6 days before he passed, and that was just and we really struggled because Bob struggles technically at 96, 97, whatever he was. We had to get the high school coach to actually get him set up on the computer, and bless his heart, and that was such a fun, Bob was just, you could predict his mannerisms, the way he talked, his pauses that were just perfectly timed. He kind of reminded me of Jack Benny that way or something, how he could just, his timing was.
See, Beard sounds, I hear Beard talk and he sounds like him. I cannot believe it. He even uses some of the same phrases. I was lucky enough. I was really blessed. I got to come up and see him. I don't know when it was, October, September, sometime, within the 6 months before he passed. Mm-hmm. And I took him out to dinner, and he showed me through the library for the 13th time.
It's wonderful.
And he was just everybody's favorite. I mean, what a man. These are guys, Rich Greeno, I used to stop and see him every time I'd go through Sioux Falls. I'd go to the home he was at, and boy, he really faded fast when he went. But these guys were such good friends. I spent half my life down at Lincoln High School during the year. I'd always be stopping at Lincoln High School. We'd be there at midnight.
I always said
I was going out and run on the river and with the ice flowing. And he'd say, just stay with me. We'll be okay.
I was kind of an adopted Lincoln Knight because with Mike and Mark Bills they were like brothers. And then I had a great friend, Al Stratmeyer, was a little guy.
Yeah, you talked about him.
Yeah, he was at Lenox, and he was like a younger brother, good friend. He was my best man at our wedding. And, he ran a 2:42 marathon as a high school kid. And I've never, you would probably, nowadays they don't really keep track of that. SDSU, I think I have the marathon record. It's not really recorded anywhere because they really, unless you have an interest in that sort of thing, which nobody, that's fine. It's in the, but as far as high school kids, 2:42 for a high school South Dakota kid, I don't know if anybody's run faster. You have to think
Jay Monfort might be the only, if I had to think of somebody off the top of my head, I'd think he'd be the one guy that may.
Check. If you ever get a chance, you probably knew Jay and Pete. I don't know. Their dad was a physician, I believe.
Yes, I knew them real well. I spent a few hours in their home.
Those are the kind of guys, and Doug Garris was a good friend of Pete Monfort and Jay's older brother. And so those are the kind of guys, if we ever get the chance to get back to SDSU, maybe next fall for in cross-country invite or something like that. If Dick and I are going to be there, we're going to send you a note and say, we're going to be in Brookings. You better be there. And knowing that's a hop, skip, and a jump for you.
Yeah, I don't mind getting in a car and driving 10 hours.
Jay,
I'm going to all the football games in Nebraska every home game.
I said you're a dynamo. And keep whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I know you've had some health issues. We don't need to go into that today. You're looking great. Yeah. You sound fantastic.
Thanks.
Keep going. I'm going to cut us off. Jay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much.
And I want to thank anybody who's listening.
You, man.
If you get a chance, you can always listen to this on any of the sites that carry our podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, all of that, or on YouTube. If you ever get a chance, you want to see us. Thanks for listening. We hope to catch you next time.